Hey everyone. Tonight, we're setting out on a journey through every medieval kingdom you can imagine. From the frost-covered lands of Scandinavia to the sun-baked castles of the Mediterranean, we'll wander through the bustling towns, quiet villages, and grand courts, discovering the little details that made each kingdom unique. So, before you get cozy under that warm blanket, go ahead and like this video and subscribe to the channel. But only if what I do here genuinely helps you wind down at night. And hey, I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? And what time is it right now? There's something oddly soothing about knowing there are others awake with us, wandering through history together. Now, dim the lights. Light a candle if you've got one, or just let the soft glow of your screen flicker like a hearth on a calm night. Maybe let a soft hum play in the background, steady and low, like the wind outside an old stone wall. Close your eyes gently. Let the weight of today melt away. The first kingdom waits quietly, its roads worn by countless feet, its walls holding centuries of secrets. The sun rises slowly over the damp fields of West Francia, casting a thin mist over tilled earth and wooden huts in the Frankish kingdom. It is the year 875. The smell of cooked grain and hearth smoke clings to the morning air. Roosters crow from the shadows of barns, unaware that this is not their kingdom. It belongs to Charles the Bald. You walk past thatched homes and through a narrow market lane where cloth traders are still setting up their bolts of dull wool and scratchy linen. The coins in your pouch feel heavy, though it's likely because they're mostly copper. Silver is scarce, and gold is for nobles. You have neither title nor land, but today you've been invited to court. The Royal Hall of Charles is not a castle, not yet. It's more like a fortified house, half stone, half timber, with a smoky roof and armed guards standing awkwardly in woolen tunics. They wear swords longer than their arms, but most wouldn't know how to use them. Their real weapon is their silence. It keeps peasants like you from asking too many questions. Inside the hall, everything smells of meat. Boar, mutton, grease. Even the wood paneling has absorbed the scent. There are no windows, only slits in the walls. Tallow candles burn low on iron stands, giving off more smoke than light. Monks in dark robes crouch in corners, copying Latin texts on uneven desks. Their quills scrape quietly, a strange contrast to the noisy feast preparations unfolding nearby. Servants shuffle past with trenchers, round loaves of stale bread used as plates. The bread is hard enough to break a tooth, but that's intentional. The nobles don't eat the trenchers. They toss them to the poor after soaking them in meat juice. If you're lucky, one might be thrown your way later. And then, there he is, Charles the Bald. Not bald at all, which is slightly disappointing. His hair is thin but present, and his beard is thick and gray. He wears a robe lined with squirrel fur, stitched with blue thread. It's the kind of garment that says, I am important, but I'm also practical. This is a cold stone hall. He raises a horn of mead. It drips onto the long table, but no one mentions it. Protocol is more important than cleanliness. His voice booms, not with the weight of charisma, but with the authority of a man who has inherited a crown and intends to keep it by listing his ancestors at every opportunity. To your left, a bishop coughs into a cloth. He looks like he's been sitting in the same seat since last Pentecost. His hat is tall, but his patience is thin. Every time someone interrupts Charles, the bishop flinches like he's expecting excommunication to fall from the rafters. You take a wooden cup of warm ale and sit at the end of a long splintered bench. The man beside you gnaws on something that looks like an overcooked root. He tells you it's a parsnip, then admits it's actually a turnip. We lie about vegetables in polite company, he whispers. The feast begins not with music, but with a reading from a monk so nasal and slow that the boar is cold by the time it ends. You clap politely, even though you didn't understand a word. Latin does that to people. Platters appear. You see goose, pigeon, and something that might be fish but smells like pond water. Knives are passed hand to hand. No one has a personal fork. Forks are for Italians in suspicion. You stab what you can and chew without complaint. Charles stands again. This is the fourth toast. His mead sloshes. He names 3 saints, 2 ancestors, and a horse he once rode into Burgundy. The room laughs, but not too loudly. Everyone here remembers what happened to the last court jester. He insulted a bishop's wine and was reassigned to mucking out the stables. His wit has not improved. You glance at the tapestry hanging behind the throne. It shows Charles at war, though it's a generous interpretation. In truth, most of his battles involve waiting for other kings to die, then swooping in to claim the land. Still, there's something admirable in that. Why fight when you can inherit? The nobles begin to play a dice game with polished bones. A knight wagers a silver clasp. Another offers a hawk's feather. You offer a half-eaten turnip and are told, politely, to observe instead. Later, the hall quiets as a procession of monks enters. They carry a reliquary, said to contain a sliver of St. Martin's finger. You try not to look too closely. Bones make you nervous. Everyone crosses themselves and whispers reverently. Charles doesn't move. He's asleep. His cup has fallen over. Mead trickles into the fur of his robe. No one wakes him. As the fire burns low, you feel the room shift. The politics of power remain, but the pageantry begins to fade. The nobles shuffle off, muttering in Frankish. The monks pack away their books. A servant yawns and stretches his arms until his tunic rides up. You stand, stretch your own legs, and realize you've been seated for hours. A guard nods toward the door. That's your cue to leave. You step out into the dark, where the smell of mead and fire still clings to your clothes. The stars are sharp and silent above West Francia. Tomorrow, there will be taxes, quarrels over land, maybe even war. But tonight, you walked among rulers. You saw the workings of a kingdom held together by ink, wine, and the vague hope that no one else wants the throne too badly. You smile, then you sneeze. Someone's squirrel cloak shed on you. You walk away from the hall, your boots soft in the grass. The air is cold. Your thoughts are warm. The kingdom, for now, is quiet, and Charles the Bald is still not bald. Now, you step from a small boat onto a wide stone quay. You are in the Byzantine Empire. The sea air is sharp with salt and seaweed. Ships tie up beside each other, their sails furled, their crews already unloading chests of goods. You walk along the water until you reach a gate carved with winged creatures. A guard gives a brief nod. You pass through and enter a world drenched in color. Constantinople stretches before you in layers. Below stands the bustling harbor. Above, towers rise, domes of white marble and glittering mosaics that catch the sun like fire. The city rings with sounds, the call of merchants selling dates and dried fish, the clatter of horses on cobblestones, and the low laughter of children playing near a fountain. You walk toward the great palace. Its walls are painted pale gold. A line of eunuchs stands at one entrance, their faces composed. Some carry scrolls, others hold keys. They exchange quiet words that drift across the stone hall. Every glance tells a story. Every pause hints at loyalty or betrayal. These men have given up much: family, freedom, so they could guard secrets hidden beneath these walls. You step inside and find yourself surrounded by columns. Each is carved with vine patterns, shimmering with traces of old oil lamps. The air smells faintly of wax and incense that drifts from a nearby chapel. Soft music hums from another hall. A lyre, strings plucked with gentle care. You know this palace is the heart of an empire. The ruler commands from here, and emperors have ruled for more than 1,000 years. On your left, a silk merchant unfolds a bolt of cloth dyed purple. Purple is rare and costly. It once was for kings alone. You touch the fabric and feel its thin strength. It flows like water. It catches the light. Someone whispers that the silk came from China, stitched into geometry in Persia, and shipped through the desert by camel. Now it is here, for the richest. You pass a spice merchant lifting a brass bowl filled with bright powders, cumin, cinnamon, saffron. The scent rises like steam. You sniff slowly. The flavors promise faraway places: southern hills, eastern plains, tropical lands. A cook nearby breathes in the scent and smiles. He carries a tray of bread dipped in honey and sesame. It tastes of both home and adventure. Further inside, you find a courtyard paved with stones in red and white patterns. A few courtiers stand there, talking in soft voices. You catch bits: talk of a rebellion in Anatolia, rumors of a new law. One courtier whispers that the emperor wears a crown studded with pearls, each pearl blessed by a monk. Another mumbles that eunuchs guard each pearl. They glower at him, and he falls silent. You notice a young noblewoman strolling by. She wears a long dress trimmed in gold braid and carries a fan blue as the sky. Two eunuchs follow her, stepping softly behind. No one speaks. No one laughs. Everything here moves like a dance, with hidden steps. A tall guard steps forward and leads you through a grand hall. Mosaics cover every inch of wall and ceiling. They show scenes from stories you know: saints and soldiers, angels and animals. Each stone piece shines in different tones: emerald green, lapis lazuli blue, flaming red. The images seem to shift as you walk. People stare at them like they hold truths about heaven or earth. You imagine someone spent years placing each stone, matching colors with devotion and care. You pause for a moment. A priest stands by a bowl of water scented with myrrh. He dips a brush and touches a column, crossing himself. You begin to understand what this empire values: faith, order, legacy. Each person here plays a role. Each action matters. Still, beneath the surface, you sense something else. The palace breathes with intrigue. You overhear two eunuchs discussing a rival noble. Their whispers are quiet but sharp. Another servant glances over and then scurries away. You realize that power flows through these halls like hidden water. It's clear on silk and stones. It's hidden in silence. You lean against a marble balcony and look down at the harbor. The water moves calmly, even as it reflects firelight from oil lamps. You think about how this empire has balanced so many forces, east and west, old and new, faith and politics. Each sunrise brings the same routines, but also new plots, fresh ambitions, subtle betrayals. A horn sounds. Guards hurry past, swords at their sides. Merchants gather their stalls. Courtiers prepare for midday, and you feel a gentle shift. The palace awakens fully, under veils of ceremony, clothes polished to perfection, voices measured. You walk out through another gate, leaving behind echoes of marble halls and hidden oaths. A breeze lifts your hair, and you breathe deeply. You remember silk and smoke, mosaics and murmurs. You realize that this world thrived on appearances, on colors and secrets, on power held as much in what was whispered as in what was shown. You climb back into your small boat at the quay. The city fades behind you, domes glinting in the afternoon light. A merchant waves from his ship. A fisherman hauls in his nets. Tomorrow, this empire will continue its dance of grandeur and gossip. For now, you rest. You've walked through corridors of glory. You've glimpsed lives shaped by silk threads, incense smoke, and careful words. You've felt the balance between beauty and intrigue, faith and fear. You've carried home a piece of history, glimmering like a mosaic, gentle like a whispered vow. You turn a corner and find yourself standing before a round wall of red brick, the famous round city of Baghdad of the Abbasid Caliphate. It is early morning and the air carries a cool hush. Through a carved gate, you step inside and feel a pulse, something different from the clang of swords or smell of battle. Here, ideas are treated like gold. This is the Abbasid capital in its prime, a sprawling city filled with scholars, merchants, poets, and the occasional confused traveler who came looking for warriors but found philosophers instead. The city is designed in perfect circles. At its heart sit the Caliph's palace and the great mosque. Around them, streets fan out like sun rays. Beyond the walls, villages cling to orchards and riverbanks. You wander toward the House of Wisdom, Baghdad's famous academy. Inside, you see scholars in robes of various colors copying texts. Some translate Greek works into Arabic. Others reflect on Persian poetry or Indian mathematics. The air is filled with the soft scraping of reeds on parchment and the occasional sigh of satisfaction when a tricky line is translated correctly. Here, ink holds more power than a sword. The scholars debate Aristotle's ideas one moment and consider algebra the next. You overhear someone explaining how to calculate the height of a pyramid using simple geometry. Across the room, another sets up a small sundial, testing shadows with quiet concentration. A laugh escapes when someone misplaces a comma in a line of poetry. They all know a small mark can change meaning entirely. Outside these walls, paper mills have sprung up across the city. After learning the art from Chinese craftsmen captured at Talas, papermaking became common. Workers pound bamboo and rags, producing soft sheets that replace expensive parchment. The result? Libraries, bookshops, and private collections full of words, not just wood and wool. Just down from the academy, you spot the observatory of Caliph al-Mamun. Beneath a wooden dome, astronomers in turbans adjust brass instruments toward the sky. One points out a strange star alignment. Another jots notes in a leather-bound notebook. They debate whether the heavens influence poetry and medicine alike. Their tables display astrolabes and armillary spheres, measuring time and distance. This is science shaped by faith, not separate from it. Baghdad buzzes with culture. In shaded courtyards, musicians strum ouds while poets sip date wine and recite verses. A group of men gathers at the Dome of Poets each Tuesday to compose new lines. In lively taverns, hidden and discreet, singing women entertain the middle class. You might see a Christian, a Jew, a Zoroastrian, and a Muslim sharing news of the day. Their voices rise without conflict. They speak in Arabic, the language of both faith and science. On the winding streets, merchants unload silk from Persia, spices from India, and slaves from Africa. You hear gossip in Persian, Syriac, and Greek. The smell of smelted bronze floats from nearby workshops. You pass scholars who carry scrolls, leather-bound books, and wooden tablets, all tools of peace, not war. In quieter neighborhoods, children play beneath date palms and shout rhymes, some old and some newly written. Families picnic by the Tigris, tossing back sweet flatbread and rice with honey. You might spot a matron carrying a clay tablet, no longer for tax receipts, but for lessons on grammar and numbers. Literacy is spreading. At midday, you join a small crowd at a public reading. A man reads from a famed medical text, explaining how to spot measles or smallpox. He names his sources: Hippocrates, Galen, and local doctors like Al-Razi. The audience listens respectfully, grateful that suffering can be treated without walking for days or blindly guessing. By afternoon, the mosque's prayer call echoes through the streets. Shopkeepers pause, scholars fold their pages, and children bow beside their grandmothers. Baghdad knows routines beyond bullets. There is solace in ritual, in the sound of many voices rising in harmony, not in conflict. As dusk falls, oil lamps flicker along the main thoroughfares. You return to the House of Wisdom one last time. Some translators are still working, their faces tired but content. A scribe laughs softly when a fellow scholar recites a joke in broken Greek. You marvel at how this place values humor as much as knowledge. Night brings a different rhythm. You might walk by the riverbank and hear storytellers spinning tales about jinn and caliphs. You might pause at a tea house where customers argue about philosophy, astronomy, or medicine. Softly, passionately, and without swords drawn. The air tastes faintly of mint, cinnamon, and anticipation. Before sleep, you climb to one of the city's rooftops. The stars above are bright. You recall the astronomers counting them, measuring their movements, naming them with careful care. Under this same sky, ideas took shape centuries ago. Baghdad was not built on conquest. It was built on curiosity. Now, you sit cross-legged by the hearth in a low-roofed hall that smells of wet wool, pork grease, and the smoky remains of yesterday's fire. The walls are timber and mud. A dog sleeps near your feet. Somewhere, someone is loudly chewing something that might once have been bread. This is England, the Anglo-Saxon kind. Before castles, before crowns with rubies, before the French came and ruined the spelling of everything. This is the Kingdom of England. It's raining, of course. You can hear it pattering softly on the thatch above you. The hall is dim, but there's enough light to see the gleam of iron rivets on the Reeve's belt. The Reeve is a local lawman. He isn't smiling. He tells you justice is simple here. Not easy, but simple. If you steal a pig, you pay a fine. If you kill someone's brother, you owe them a were-guild, a man price. If you don't pay, the feud begins. Families can spend generations hunting each other down because one person got too angry during a sheep sale. There is no police, no jail, only the folk moot, a group of villagers who gather near a large stone and argue about who hit whom and whether it was justified. Everyone talks, everyone votes. The loudest voice tends to win. It's democracy, if democracy smelled like old onions and lived in fear of Danish longships. The monk beside you shifts his robes. He smells like damp parchment and guilt. He's been copying the Psalms for most of the morning and is now lecturing you very gently about the dangers of sin. Everything, it seems, can lead to hell. Smiling too much, sleeping too long, using too many herbs. He says God sees all. Even if your roof leaks and your grain's gone moldy, he knows if you've been impure with the girl who sells turnips. You nod slowly. The monk doesn't blink. Outside, someone rings a small iron bell. The reeve stands. It's time for the scolding. Not yours, this time. A boy was caught cutting the tail off a neighbor's ox. No one knows why. He claims it was for luck. The reeve calls it stupidity. The villagers agree. The boy is fined a few coins and must chop wood for the reeve's mother. Justice served. Everyone nods. The monk says a prayer. At midday, you drink ale. Everyone does, even the children. The water isn't safe, but the ale, weak as it is, has been boiled and brewed. It tastes like someone dropped bread into a puddle and left it there for 3 days. But it's warm. And in winter, that counts. You ask someone about leeches, not the kind that live in rivers, the kind that live in houses and call themselves healers. Leechcraft, they call it here. The woman who tends to wounds tells you she has herbs for every ailment. Fever, nettles, cough, honey and ash bark, possession by demons, a poultice made from onions, wine, and a small prayer whispered backwards. She shows you her kit. It contains a knife, a spoon, and a few crusted flasks. She once removed a splinter from a Thane's leg using a goose feather and a blessing. He survived. The feather did not. Afternoons in this village pass slowly. The fields lie bare for the season. The pigs snort in the mud. Children chase each other with sticks, pretending to be warriors or saints. A man with one tooth plays a bone flute that sounds like a dying goose. You listen politely. The monk winces. The reeve returns. He's brought news. The king, Ethelred, wants more taxes. This causes groaning. Taxes in this time come in odd shapes. Sometimes it's silver. Sometimes it's 10 pigs and a promise not to stab the tax collector. Everyone agrees the king is doing his best, though no one seems quite sure what his best actually is. The reeve mutters something about Danes again. As the sky darkens, the candles are lit. They smell of tallow, fat rendered from animals who no longer needed it. The monk reads from a psalter in Latin. No one understands a word, but it sounds holy enough to quiet the children. You step outside for air. The wind is sharp. You see distant fires glowing in the hills. Other villages, just like this one, living through another long evening of damp cloaks and cold fingers. A hound trots by. No one owns it, but everyone feeds it. Back inside, the hall is warmer. The ale is still warm too, unfortunately. You sit again. A woman sings a song about a brave girl who escaped a troll by pretending to be his mother. The monk disapproves, but no one is listening to him anymore. A boy passes you a bowl of stew. It tastes like cabbage and regret. The meat may be rabbit, or not. You eat it anyway. Everyone does. Hunger is a strong seasoning. You ask the reeve what happens if someone breaks the king's peace, starts a fight in church, or stabs a nobleman. His eyes grow serious. Then they hang. Simple as that. A short rope, a tall tree, and no more questions. You don't ask a second time. The monk is snoring now, still holding his psalter. The reeve is talking softly to the village elder about wolves stealing a sheep. You sit quietly, hands warm near the coals. The hound curls up beside you. This is life in England. Not glamorous, not heroic. Just long winters, loud laws, and slightly sour ale. But it works. Just enough. You've been walking through trees for hours. Dense, wet, uncooperative trees. If you weren't following a mule carrying 36 iron pots, you'd swear you were lost. The path winds through the hills of Swabia. Or maybe it's Franconia. Truthfully, no one really knows where one ends and the other begins. That's the first thing you notice about the Holy Roman Empire. It's not holy, it's not Roman, and it's not exactly an empire, but it is loud and proud and profoundly disorganized. When you finally reach a settlement, it's less a town and more a cluster of stone buildings with thatched roofs, huddled near a river that smells faintly of cabbage and metal. Blacksmiths hammer from dawn until dark. The sound is constant, like a church bell that's had too much mead. But this is the heart of something important. You're standing in one of the many free cities of the empire, a place that swears loyalty to a far-off emperor, while doing whatever it pleases on market day. You see a bishop in full regalia walk past a brewer covered in barley dust. No one blinks. Power here wears many faces. There are dukes, electors, archbishops, landgraves, and burgraves, and they all insist on being called Your Grace, even when arguing over whose pigs ate whose apples. Everyone holds a title. Everyone has a seal. But no one seems to know who's in charge. The Holy Roman Emperor, in theory, holds supreme authority. In practice, he is elected by 7 powerful princes and must ask politely if he wants anything done. He is crowned by the Pope, though sometimes with more hesitation than ceremony. The road to power here is not through birthright alone, but negotiation, bribes, marriages, and occasionally a very strategic joust. You hear one merchant mutter, "We've had 5 emperors in the past century, and not one has fixed the bridge." Still, the empire is wealthy, very wealthy. Silver flows from the mines in the Tyrol. Salt comes from Salzburg. Copper, tin, and coal are dragged out of the ground like buried treasure. You visit a mining town where the air smells like fire and hope. Boys no older than 12 shovel ore under the flicker of torches. Above ground, men argue about weights, taxes, and whether this year's coins should feature the emperor's chin or his horse. Religion is everywhere. Monks trudge along the road, robes damp with morning fog. Every village has a chapel. Every chapel has relics, bones, teeth, sometimes a dusty sandal claimed to have belonged to a saint. You attend Mass in Latin, even though no one in the room understands it fully. Still, they nod solemnly at every Amen. A peasant woman whispers prayers beside you, her eyes fixed on the altar while her child picks at the hem of your tunic. You stop for rest at a monastery nestled in the Bavarian Alps. The monks take vows of silence, but their cheese speaks volumes. They serve it with black bread and a thin beer so bitter it makes your tongue curl. Still, it's better than sleeping in a ditch. You wake before sunrise to the sound of chanting. Soft, low, steady. It echoes through stone halls and into your dreams. You wonder if they've been praying all night. They probably have. There is beauty here too. Castles perch on crags like stone owls, watching the valleys below. You visit one owned by a minor noble who insists he's descended from Charlemagne's left elbow. His halls are drafty, but filled with tapestries, stained glass, and the clink of goblets filled with wine imported from Italy. You dine at a long table, listening to minstrels sing tales of valor, betrayal, and the time someone's cousin fell into the moat. Trade routes weave across the empire like nervous stitching. You pass traders from Flanders, Venice, and the Baltic, all gathering in the great fairs of Frankfurt. Goods spill from carts: silk, salt, spices, furs, feathers, mirrors, manuscripts. A group of Hungarian merchants haggles over the price of dyed wool. Nearby, a Flemish weaver gestures wildly about thread count. It sounds like arguing. It's just business. Justice here is creative. In one village, you see a man placed in the stocks for stealing bread. In another, a pig stands trial for biting a child. The pig loses. The judge wears a red robe and an expression that suggests he's not paid enough for this. Laws vary from place to place. One town fines you for swearing. Another requires you to carry a torch after dark, or face a night in the damp cell under the town hall. The empire is a place of contradictions. It is deeply religious and deeply corrupt. It's grand and petty, splendid and muddy. You meet scholars in Cologne who debate Aristotle over cider, then watch a crowd in Mainz cheer as a bear dances in the square. You try to reconcile these scenes, but the empire resists easy understanding. At night, you lie beneath a wooden roof, listening to owls and distant chants. Smoke from a hearth curls into your blankets. You dream of maps drawn in shaky ink, of borders made of rivers and feuds. You wonder if anyone, emperor, peasant, or pig, knows where one lord's land ends and the next begins. And yet somehow, it all holds together, through chaos and compromise, through councils and coronations, through masses and mining carts. It survives. For now. Tomorrow, you'll head east toward Bohemia, but tonight, you rest in the belly of the empire, heavy with history, wrapped in mist, whispered in Latin, hammered into metal. And when sleep takes you, it does so gently, as if even the emperor himself has paused his proclamations, if only for a moment, to let you dream. Now, you're in the kingdom of Leon and Castile. The air is dry in northern Iberia. You open your eyes to the pale light of dawn, creeping over the stone walls of a town caught between the sacred and the sharp-edged. There is dust in your nose, incense on your clothes, and a quiet hum in the streets before they fill with the day's many rituals. Some devout, some deadly. You sit on the worn wooden bench of an inn whose walls have heard Arabic, Latin, and Hebrew in equal measure. Above your head hangs a rack of garlic, bundles of lavender, and 3 onions tied together in a cord. Because in this land, superstition lives side by side with scripture. The innkeeper hands you a small dish of almonds and a chunk of bread. Behind you, someone recites a prayer in Old Castilian. You're not entirely sure if it's a blessing or a curse. Outside, the world is already stirring. A Jewish merchant in a green robe calls out the quality of his saffron. His hands are stained yellow from weighing spice on copper scales. Across from him, a Christian knight polishes the edge of his longsword, his eyes never leaving the man. His tabard bears the red cross of Santiago, but the dust on his boots says he's been walking for days, not fighting. The two nod at each other. No words pass between them, but the silence isn't empty. It's careful. Leon and Castile are not lands of easy peace. They are kingdoms forged in fire, but cooled in law. Centuries of warfare against the Moors have shaped every hilltop church into a fortress, every monastery into a map room. But here, in the towns and markets, it's possible to forget that, at least for a moment. The people trade, the people argue, the people live. You follow the road up toward the cathedral. It is still under construction, of course. Most cathedrals are. Stones are dragged up steep ramps by men whose backs bend like fishing rods. A monk hands you a small scrap of parchment with a Latin psalm scribbled in ink. It is a gift, or perhaps a receipt for salvation. Hard to tell. Inside the church, the smell of frankincense is thick, but someone has spilled wax on the steps, and a small boy slips and lands squarely on his backside. His mother hisses a scolding that echoes all the way to the nave. The priest continues chanting, unfazed. God is used to the noise. But the truly sacred site today is not the church. It's the training field behind the barracks. There, men in padded tunics shout, clash, and stagger. These are not the polished knights of romance. They're tired, bruised, and very sweaty. One leans on his sword like a walking stick. Another throws up from heat and effort. They are preparing for campaign season, a term which, in Castile, generally means walking to Toledo while yelling. At noon, a bell rings. Not just for prayer, but to signal a court in session. You find your way to the town hall, a small stone building that smells faintly of sheep and vinegar. A local man has been accused of watering down wine. He insists he is innocent. His neighbor claims otherwise. The judge, wearing a heavy fur-lined robe even in the heat, listens with the face of a man who would rather be anywhere else. Justice, in Leon, is mostly about patience and excellent hearing. You stop to drink water from a trough near the market. A woman beside you dips a bucket while humming a tune you don't recognize. She tells you her family has lived here for 3 generations and once hosted a Moorish astronomer who taught her grandfather the stars. She shrugs. He was polite, good at chess. As the sun begins to lower, the streets start to hum with music. A man with a lute sings a ballad of a knight who fell in love with a girl from Cordoba. It ends poorly, as most Iberian love stories do. People toss him coins anyway. Children chase each other through alleyways, laughing in 3 languages. Evening prayer calls float from a nearby minaret. Yes, there's still a mosque here, though fewer than before. The Christian kingdom has pushed southward, and each gain of land is a loss for someone else. Still, in this town, at least tonight, the muezzin sings. The church bells don't interrupt. It's not harmony, exactly, but it is coexistence. Dinner is goat stew, heavy on garlic, light on goat. You eat with a group of stonemasons who tell you about a bridge built without mortar using a Roman trick. They are very proud of this. They argue about whether the bridge is cursed. One swears a donkey disappeared from it last year. Another says the donkey simply ran away. The debate lasts longer than the stew. Later, in the quiet, you walk along the town wall. From here, you can see far into the hills, past olive trees and the thin smoke of distant farms. The stars above are clear. So many of them, it feels like the sky is covered in dust, made of light. You sit and listen. An owl calls once, then again. The night from this morning walks past you, nods once, and continues on. The merchant sleeps somewhere below. The monk has long since snuffed his candle. The boy who fell on the steps is probably still limping, and the bells will ring again tomorrow. For now, all is still. All is quiet. Leon and Castile have made it through another day, held together by iron, parchment, and the stubborn will of people who pray, fight, and trade under the same patch of stars. And so, you rest. The wind bites harder the farther north you go. Not like a breeze, not like a storm. It bites like teeth, sharp, persistent, familiar. The kingdom of Norway is long, cold, and carved from mountains that seem to rise straight out of the sea, like the bones of some great, sleeping beast. Here, the air smells of pine and salt and firewood. Everything is slightly damp. Everything is slightly smoked. You arrive in a fishing village, nestled between steep fjords. The cliffs rise like walls, their tops lost in mist, their bases lapped by dark waters. You walk past wooden boats dragged onto shore, their hulls patched with pitch and prayers. Children chase gulls between huts roofed with grass and snow. Dogs bark, but no one looks surprised to see you. They have the tired eyes of people who see things too often. Storms, strangers, and the slow return of summer. A Norse chieftain greets you not with a handshake, but a nod. Words are precious here, as are daylight and dry socks. He offers you a strip of dried fish from a leather pouch that smells exactly as you'd expect. You eat it. You chew. You do not ask questions. It is better that way. In his longhouse, the fire cracks and pops. The smoke gathers in the rafters before curling out through the roof hole. The walls are covered with carved beams and shields. On one side, women weave wool with fingers calloused from years of winter. On the other, old men play a quiet game with carved tokens, pausing only to spit into the hearth. The chieftain's voice is low and even. He tells stories without flair. There is no need. The tales carry their own weight. Battles in snow, oaths made under stars, a promise once whispered to a dying king in a cave above the sea. These are not stories for entertainment. These are memory, obligation, a thread in the long braid of this land's people. You are offered a horn of ale, brewed thick and dark, not sweet, not pleasant, but warm. Everything here is meant to fight the cold, even the drinks. You sit near the hearth. A boy passes by, eyes wide, carrying a spear too tall for him. He is going to watch the fjord, where seals sometimes surface, and once, a long time ago, a whale washed up and was eaten in reverent silence for days. Night comes quickly. You wouldn't notice at first because the sky has been gray since you arrived, but the hearth's light begins to feel brighter. That's how you know. The chieftain's daughter sets more fish to roast. It smells like campfire and ocean. A small feast begins. No music, just chewing. A few low murmurs. And once, someone clears their throat and begins a saga. Not a short one. The sagas stretch. They grow with each telling, This one is about a man who left, built a boat with 7 others, and sailed to a land where the ground steamed and the sheep froze solid. He brought back nothing but scars and a bone from a bird no one could name. Everyone nods, as if this makes perfect sense. You sleep in the corner of the longhouse. Your bedding smells faintly of mildew and fur. Outside, the wind howls like wolves, though the locals assure you it's only the wind. In the morning, you awake to the sound of axes. Not war, just wood cutting. Always wood cutting. There is never enough firewood in Norway. Breakfast is oat porridge and a boiled egg that may or may not have been boiled all the way through. You eat it anyway. Then, wrapped in a borrowed cloak, you follow the chieftain to the ridge above the village. From here, the view opens like a secret. The fjord slices inland like a wound, its waters glassy and black. On the far side, snow gathers in soft piles on the slopes. Somewhere behind that whiteness, reindeer move in small herds, and families live in huts far from the sea, raising sheep and never seeing a boat in their lives. The chieftain points to the sky. There are birds, always birds, seagulls mostly, but once in a while, something larger, eagles, perhaps, messengers of the gods, or just very hungry. You ask about religion. He shrugs. There are old gods and new ones. The old gods are louder. The new god, Christ, is quieter, but some men say his silence is heavier. There's a wooden cross outside the longhouse. Inside, there's a carved hammer. Both are touched when people enter. Best not to take chances. Before you leave, the chieftain gives you a token, a ring made of braided iron. Not gold, not silver, iron, strong, cold, honest. You thank him. He nods again. The goodbye is short. The road waits, and the snow will fall again, soon. You walk down the slope, boots pressing into packed ice. At the edge of the village, a woman sells boiled seaweed wrapped in cloth. A child offers a wooden carving for a few copper coins. You buy both, not because you want them, but because leaving something behind feels like the right thing to do. As you descend the final trail toward the lower fjord, you look back once. The village is already fading into the white. Smoke curls from chimneys. The longhouse is just a smudge on the slope, and beyond that, the mountains keep their silence, deep and old. You step off a wooden dhow into the morning mist that rises from the Nile. Cairo has been awake for hours, even before the first muezzin climbs a minaret. This is Fatimid Cairo, born in 969 CE as Al-Qahira, the victorious city, a capital meant to reflect power and faith. You stand on Al-Muizz Street, once the grand parade ground between the twin palaces and palace walls, now lined with white domes and carved gates. You walk south through Bab al-Fudu, Gate of Triumph, its stone towers watching silently over your footsteps. The gap between city walls narrows here, filled with murmurs of merchants, camels, and the scent of spices. In the distance, the curved keel arches of Al-Azhar Mosque glow softly with early sunlight in the Fatimid Caliphate. A poet and student offers you mint tea by a wooden stall. You sip and feel Cairo's mixture of commerce and piety. Al-Azhar isn't just a mosque. It's a university founded in 970 CE, still teaching scholars from across the Islamic world. You imagine sitting in its courtyard, listening as debates flow across arches carved with Kufic script. You wander into the House of Knowledge, a quiet chamber built as a library in 1004 by Caliph al-Hakim. Scholars study astronomy and medicine here under lantern light. You glimpse a physician using a brass bowl to examine urine, an ancient test for serious illness. But it's not unpleasant, just methodical. They learned geometry, astrology, and algebra. These walls cradle centuries of curiosity. Outside again, the shouts of merchants gather around Khan el-Khalili's market, once the Fatimid Palace's southern courtyard, over their saffron tombs. The bazaar is alive with copper lamps, dyed fabrics, gemstones, and spices from Africa, India, and Arabia. A sense of calm urgency fills the narrow lanes. At midday, you enter the Akhmar Mosque, built in 1125. Its facade is studded with carved symbols: a sun, a moon, stars, signs meant to guide pilgrims. Inside, arches curve into the sky, held by muqarnas, stalactite-like forms you'd swear shift as you stare. The acoustics carry whispers across marble chambers. You close your eyes, inhaling candle wax and incense. A scholar in saffron robes invites you to a debate under a pavilion near Bain al-Kasrain. They argue Ismaili theology, poetry, and even politics with such calm precision that you almost fall asleep mid-sentence, only to jolt when the debate ends. As dusk falls, Cairo transforms again. Lanterns dangle from stucco balconies, their light pooling in climbable arches. You follow someone up a hidden staircase beside a minaret. From above, the city stretches in flickering glow. 1,000 pillars, 1,000 prayers, and the scent of bread rising from ovens. A beloved ritual begins. The adhan, the call to prayer, 5 times a day. No microphones, just voices, deep and soaring, from domes that pierce the sky. You stand in the shadow of Al-Hussein Mosque, listening, feeling an ancient calm settle on your skin. Night deepens. You eat in a courtyard lit by lanterns and torches. Stew simmers in a clay pot. Flatbread is torn into steamy broth. Fatimid physicians served food spiced to aid digestion, often cumin or ginger, a medicine meets cooking practice you admire. A physician sits at your side, sketching a fishbone fracture in the sand. He mentions Ibn al-Haytham, the scholar of optics, who wrote treatises here, texts that later influenced Europe after being translated from Arabic. You think of him as Egypt's first scientist. His lamp-lit studies led to insights that shaped centuries. Before dawn arrives, you find yourself near the great palace ruins at Bain al-Kasrain, walking along corridors once used by caliphs. The Nile hums in the distance, its water a soft promise of life amid stone. You rest beneath a crumbling arch, warmed by memory rather than flame. You remember that this place was built as a clear statement. Cairo would not be forgotten. It would stand, open to new ideas, heart of empire, court, and community. Yet, nothing lasts forever. The Fatimids fell in 1171, replaced by the Ayyubids, who repurposed mosques and opened the city. You leave just before sunrise. The city exhales a low murmur. Walls sleep, gates close, minarets fall silent. You carry with you the memory of prayer whispers, the scent of library scrolls, and the taste of mint in dusk air. Tonight, as your world drifts to sleep, imagine Cairo's 1,000 lights dimming, one by one. In quiet homes, scholars close their books. In the city's heart, the stones remember the rise and fall of ideas. And in that stillness, you hear the distant murmur of the past, inviting you to dream in scarlet lantern light and hidden staircases. You find yourself in the heart of Kievan Rus's, a sprawling land where frozen rivers snake through endless forests and snow blankets the earth much of the year. The air bites your cheeks with cold, and the sky hangs heavy with low clouds that promise more snow. It is winter, as you would expect, but the world around you is alive in a way that surprises you. A wooden sled, pulled by a team of sturdy ponies, rattles over icy paths leading into Novgorod, one of the kingdom's busiest trading cities. The town is a jumble of wooden houses topped with steep roofs, built to keep the heavy snow from settling for too long. You hear the steady clip-clop of hooves and the chatter of merchants arranging their goods. The smell of pine smoke mixes with the sharp tang of dried fish, a staple of local diets. Novgorod is unique for many reasons, but one stands out above all. It's a place where East meets West, where Viking traders mingle with Slavic villagers, and Byzantine gold icons glow in dim churches. The city thrives because of this blend, and the bustling market shows it clearly. Here, merchants trade amber, precious and golden, mined from the coasts of the Baltic Sea. It's exchanged for thick pelts, bear, fox, sable, valued treasures in colder lands where warmth is survival. You watch a man wrapped in furs argue passionately with a woman who balances scales in her weathered hands. They speak a language thick with unfamiliar sounds, but their gestures are clear. This is serious business. The amber glints in the fading light, almost too bright for such a frozen place. You turn to a nearby stall, where a merchant offers small carved crosses, icons painted on wood, and delicate silver jewelry. These items are not just goods, they hold power and protection. Religion is tightly woven into the fabric of Kievan Rus. The Grand Prince has recently embraced Christianity, but older pagan beliefs linger in the whispers of the woods and the songs of the people. The churches, humble and wooden with golden domes that shine like tiny suns, are scattered across the landscape. They are places where prayers for protection against enemies and the harshness of winter rise alongside candles flickering in cold drafts. Nearby, a sturdy man sits on a bench, carefully sharpening a long axe. He is a member of the Druzhina, the prince's personal guard. His eyes are sharp, and he glances often at the axe, then briefly at you. There's a tension about him, a quiet warning not to be careless in this land. The Druzhina are both warriors and advisors, and their loyalty is as fierce as the biting wind. You decide to join him for a meal, drawn by the smell of something rich and garlicky, cooking over an open fire. He ladles a thick garlic soup into wooden bowls, its steam swirling like ghostly figures in the cold air. The soup is simple, but powerful, made with whatever root vegetables and salted meat are on hand, a recipe passed down through generations to keep hunger and frost at bay. As you eat, he tells stories of raids and battles, his voice low but steady. There is no glorifying war here, only a sober understanding that survival depends on strength and unity. The lands of Kievan Rus are vast and wild, with dangers not only from rival princes, but also from the untamed forests and harsh winters. Trade, warfare, faith, and family tie the people to their land, each element as necessary as the other. The rivers, frozen in winter, become highways in the cold months, allowing for faster travel on sleds and ice skates. When the snow melts, boats replace sleds, and the same waterways that freeze over become routes for merchants and warriors alike. Kievan Rus is not a kingdom of grand castles or marble palaces. Instead, it is a world of wooden fortresses, smoky halls, and simple villages wrapped in fur and wood. The people here take pride in their resilience. They know how to survive bitter winters and fierce enemies. Their culture is a patchwork of old pagan rites and new Christian faith, creating a rich, sometimes confusing, but deeply rooted way of life. You notice how important honor and loyalty are to the people around you. The Druzhina warrior, despite his fierce reputation, shares a joke with a fellow soldier and laughs with a warmth that cuts through the cold. Here, strength is balanced by community, and stories are a currency almost as valuable as gold or amber. Before leaving, you walk through the marketplace once more. The scent of smoked fish and pine lingers. A minstrel sings an old song in a language you don't understand, but the melody feels ancient and comforting. You realize that Kivan Rus's is a place where the past and present coexist, where frozen rivers guard secrets beneath their ice, and where the spirit of the people shines as brightly as the golden icons in the churches. As you climb back onto your sled, the pony's breath clouds in the cold air. You look back once more at the flickering lights of Novgorod, then forward to the long journey ahead. This kingdom of ice and fire, faith and ferocity, has left its mark on you. You pull your cloak tighter and prepare to ride into the endless white, carrying with you the stories of a land both harsh and beautiful. You find yourself standing at a crossroads, not just of roads, but of worlds. Here is the kingdom of Hungary, a place where East meets West, where old traditions collide with new beliefs. The air is thick with the smell of burning wood and freshly ground paprika, the spice that colors many a meal, and many a conversation. It is a land shaped by fire and faith. Around you, the sounds are strange and familiar. From a distant chapel, the deep voice of a bishop echoes in Latin. His words are old and weighty, prayers that rise like smoke from the altar. Nearby, a horseman rugged and unshaven spits with a sharp click, a sign of disdain or perhaps warning. He wears a fur-lined coat and carries a bow curved like a crescent moon. His eyes flick to you briefly before returning to the horizon. You realize you are caught between two worlds. On one side, the Latin Church with its stone cathedrals and sacred rituals. On the other, the nomadic steppe traditions that have shaped the lives of horsemen and warriors for generations. This is Hungary, a kingdom forged from fire and faith, caught in the uneasy dance of cultures. As you walk through a bustling market in the capital, Esztergom, your senses are overwhelmed. Vendors shout, selling everything from embroidered cloth to dried fruits. The air tastes of smoke and spices. A pot simmers on a fire nearby, its rich red broth bursting with paprika, garlic, and onions. A woman stirs the stew with a wooden spoon, her face lined with years of sun and wind. She smiles briefly when your eyes meet hers, but quickly returns to her work. The market is a place of contrast. You see merchants from distant lands, their faces marked by travel and trade. Some wear long robes and turbans, while others are dressed in heavy furs and leather boots. This is a kingdom where many paths cross, where goods and ideas flow freely, but wariness lingers beneath the surface. You notice an unusual sight. A group of men playing a game you do not recognize. They sit cross-legged on the ground, flicking small carved stones back and forth. Their laughter is low and tense. This game, you learn, is a favorite pastime of the steppe horsemen who have settled here. It is a game of skill and chance, much like life itself in this borderland. The presence of the steppe people has deeply influenced Hungarian culture. Horses are everywhere, pulling carts, carrying riders, even featured in local songs and legends. The horse is more than an animal here. It is a symbol of freedom and survival. You overhear a young boy boasting to his friends about his riding skills, his voice filled with pride. Religion is another pillar of this kingdom. The Latin Church has spread far and wide, and its bishops hold great power. Yet, remnants of older beliefs still linger. Some villagers perform simple rituals at the edge of forests, offering gifts to unseen spirits. These practices are whispered about, but rarely spoken openly in towns. The tension between official religion and folk customs creates an invisible line, dividing people's hearts and minds. You visit a local church, its walls thick and cold. Inside, the flicker of candles casts shadows on ancient frescoes. The priest greets you with a nod, his face serious. He tells stories of saints and miracles, of battles fought to defend the faith. Yet, you sense a weariness beneath his words, a quiet struggle to keep traditions alive in a changing world. Outside the church, a group of villagers prepares for a festival. They adorn themselves with colorful ribbons and embroidered shirts. Music fills the air as fiddlers and drummers gather. The celebration is a blend of Christian and pagan customs, processions alongside dances that echo older rhythms. You watch as young men and women whirl in circles, their laughter ringing clear despite the chill. The kingdom's history is marked by conflict and resilience. For centuries, Hungary has faced invasions from Mongols, Turks, and others who sought to claim its fertile lands. Walls and fortresses rise along the borders, silent witnesses to battles long past. Yet the people remain fiercely proud, their identity forged in fire. In the evening, you sit by a fire with a group of locals. The conversation turns to politics and power. They speak of kings who tried to unite the land, of nobles who squabbled over titles and territories. The common folk are caught in the middle, often paying the price for ambitions they barely understand. One man, his face weathered and wise, tells you about the Black Army, a group of mercenaries loyal to King Matthias Corvinus. These soldiers were known for their discipline and brutality, feared by enemies near and far. Their legacy is still remembered in tales told around fires like this one. As the night deepens, you reflect on what makes this kingdom unique. It is a place of contrasts, east and west, old and new, peace and war. The spice of paprika flavors the food, just as diverse cultures flavor the lives of its people. The horse remains a symbol of freedom, even as castles and churches grow taller. The tension you felt earlier does not disappear, but it softens with time. Here, people live with uncertainty, balancing tradition and change. Their stories are layered like the folds of a richly embroidered cloth, each thread adding to the whole. You rise and look toward the horizon. The sky is clear and vast. Somewhere beyond, the steppes stretch wide, a reminder of a past that still shapes the present. The church bells ring in the distance, mingling with the distant howl of wolves. You take a deep breath. This is Hungary, a kingdom where fire warms the heart and faith lights the way. Now, you're in the kingdom of Scotland. You step off the narrow, muddy path and into the cold, damp air that wraps the Scottish moors like a heavy cloak. The sky above is a thick blanket of gray, and the wind carries the scent of wet earth and burning peat. It's a world painted in shades of green and brown, where mist creeps low, wrapping around the hills and softening the edges of the rocky land. A short walk brings you to a sturdy stone longhouse, its walls darkened by centuries of smoke and rain. The roof is thick with thatch, weighed down by moss and time. As you enter, the sharp tang of burning peat greets you. A smell that fills the room with warmth and something almost like comfort, despite the chill that clings to your clothes. Inside, the long wooden table stretches almost from one end of the hall to the other. Flickering candles sit in iron sconces, their flames trembling with the draft that slips through cracks in the stone. At the far end, several men in rough woolen cloaks sit close to the fire. Their faces are weathered, carved by wind and sun and countless hard seasons. These are the chieftains, the lords of the clans, men whose power rests on loyalty, skill with a blade, and a stubborn refusal to surrender. The room is filled with quiet murmurs and the soft clinking of drinking horns. The men talk in low, measured tones, their voices slow but carrying the sharp edge of careful thought. Words are chosen like weapons. A slip could mean insult or even bloodshed. Conversation moves like the steady drip of rain outside, persistent and unyielding. You take a seat by the fire, feeling the heat push back the dampness that settled on your skin. The peat burns slowly, glowing red beneath a pile of gray ash. This fire is different from any you've known. It's not a roaring blaze, but a patient, steady burn that warms without overwhelming. It's a reminder of the land itself, harsh, enduring, and always present. Outside, the sound of bagpipes drifts faintly through the mist, their haunting notes weaving a tale of ancient battles, lost loves, and the endless dance of seasons. The music is as much a part of this place as the hills and the rain. It stirs something deep in the heart, a longing for stories told around fires like this one, for a time when words held power equal to swords. Food arrives on heavy wooden platters, oatcakes, salted herring, and thick slices of smoked venison. The meal is simple but hearty, made to fuel men who live in a land where the weather is a constant challenge, and survival depends on strength and wit. You bite into the oatcake, its crumbly texture a little dry, but perfect with a smear of sharp cheese. The saltiness of the fish cuts through the smoke in the room, reminding you that every bite is earned. One of the chieftains leans over, his eyes bright beneath a tangled mess of graying hair. "The weather never gives us a break," he says with a rough chuckle. "Rain is as common as the sheep on these hills, but it keeps us sharp. Soft men don't last here." His words echo the truth of this land. The Scottish kingdom is shaped by its environment. It's a place where the mist hides secrets, where stone walls keep out the cold, and where clans rise and fall with the tides of loyalty and war. Here, tradition rules as firmly as any king, and the clans are bound by laws older than the castles themselves. One of those laws is the ancient custom of man rent. It's a promise, a binding agreement between a lesser lord and a more powerful chief, pledging support in battle and loyalty in peace. These bonds are serious. Breaking one means exile or worse. It's a network of trust and fear, loyalty and survival that holds the kingdom together, even when kingship feels distant or weak. The chieftains' voices grow louder now, recounting tales of skirmishes with neighboring clans. Each story is a careful mix of honor and warning, victories celebrated quietly and losses mourned with heavy hearts. There is no boasting here, only respect for the land and the endless struggle to claim a place in it. You notice a small group of women moving quietly in the background, their hands busy with spinning wool and preparing herbs. They speak softly, their words a thread in the fabric of the hall's life. Women in these clans hold their own kind of power, managing homes, healing wounds, and passing down stories that keep history alive. Their roles may be quieter, but no less vital. As the night deepens, the rain intensifies outside. Water taps rhythmically on the thatch, a steady companion to the crackling fire. The pipes play on, their mournful song filling the room and seeping into your bones. You glance around and realize this kingdom is more than battles and politics. It's a world of resilience and ritual, where every sound and smell holds meaning, where the landscape shapes the people as much as any ruler or law. Before you leave, one of the chieftains raises his drinking horn in your direction. "To the mist and the iron," he says simply, "and to those who live between." You take a slow sip, feeling the rough warmth of the ale spread through you. Outside, the rain continues its endless fall. Inside, the fire glows steady, and the pipes sing their ancient song. This is Scotland, the kingdom where the land is as much a ruler as any man. You arrive on the edge of the Danish coast, where the sea's scent is sharp and constant, like a friend who never quite leaves your side. Waves crash gently against rocky shores, and gulls wheel overhead, their cries mixing with the low murmur of village life. The air is cool and carries a hint of salt, bracing yet oddly comforting. This is the Kingdom of Denmark. In Denmark, the ocean is not just nearby, it shapes everything. Boats with curved wooden hulls lie pulled up on the shore, ready for the next voyage. These are not just any vessels. They are longboats, sleek and swift, designed to slip through water like fish, perfect for fishing, trading, or the more famous purpose, raiding. But today, there's no battle ahead, just the slow rhythm of daily life. Walking inland, you find yourself in a village. The buildings are wooden, with steep roofs to shed the frequent rain. Smoke rises lazily from stone hearths, promising warmth and food. Inside one large hall, carved shields hang on the walls like silent witnesses to past conflicts and feasts. The wood smells of pine and fire, dry and slightly sweet. This hall is more than a place to eat. It is the heart of the community, a space for storytelling, celebration, and crucially, the law thing. The law thing is a gathering where disputes are settled, decisions made, and rules reminded. Here, lawmen sit on benches, their faces serious beneath broad-brimmed hats or simple caps. Their job is no joke, even if the debates can sometimes seem endless. Right now, a quarrel unfolds over cattle, who owns which cows, and whose fence was knocked down last winter. The lawmen speak in low tones, but their words carry weight. Each argument is backed by witnesses, and sometimes the settling of a dispute comes with an unexpected twist. A fine, a public apology, or a challenge to a duel. The law thing balances order and chaos, hospitality, and suspicion. What makes Denmark unique is this constant tension between community and independence. People rely on each other, but everyone is aware that the sea could call them away at any moment. A neighbor today might be a longboat captain tomorrow, crossing the waves for trade or less peaceful reasons. Outside, children play near a small wooden dock, throwing pebbles into the water. Their laughter rings clear. Nearby, fishermen mend nets, their hands rough but practiced. Everyone knows the value of skill and strength here, whether at sea or on land. As the sun dips low, the sky turns a soft orange. The hall's hearth blazes brighter, casting flickering shadows on the faces gathered inside. A bard stands, tuning a lyre, ready to sing of old heroes and ancient gods. Stories matter here, as much as laws. They keep the past alive, reminding everyone where they come from and who they might become. In Denmark, you notice small, odd customs too. Before meals, it's common to raise a horn of mead and offer a toast, not just to health, but to courage, wisdom, and the ancestors who watch silently. Drinking is serious business, but not without laughter and teasing. The jester's role is subtle, but vital. Sometimes a sharp joke teaches more than a stern word. As night falls, the village quiets, except for the crackling fire and distant calls of owls. You rest, knowing tomorrow may bring a journey across the sea or another meeting in the wooden hall. Here, life is shaped by waves and laws, stories and disputes, an endless dance between risk and refuge. In this kingdom of longboats and law things, every day carries the weight of tradition and the promise of the unknown. And somehow, amid the arguments and the salt air, there's a deep, steady pulse of community that holds it all together. The sun hangs low over Marrakesh, casting long shadows that stretch across red sandstone walls. The city glows warm, like a handful of embers waiting for night to settle. You step cautiously through narrow streets lined with homes made of clay and stone, their walls rough but sturdy enough to hold centuries of secrets. This place is far from the kingdoms of knights and castles you might expect from tales of medieval Europe. Here, the desert meets the city, and silence often speaks louder than words. This is the Almoravid Empire. Around you, the sounds are a curious mix. The low murmur of voices, the distant call to prayer, and the faint clatter of sandals against stone. It's a rhythm that feels both ancient and alive. A man in flowing robes passes by, carrying a bundle of parchments, his eyes sharp as a hawk's. You follow him without meaning to, curiosity pulling you toward a small courtyard where a group gathers. In the center stands an imam, his fingers tracing lines and angles on a wooden board. Geometry, he says, is the key to understanding God's creation. It is not just numbers and shapes, but a language written in the stars, the earth, and the quiet spaces in between. You watch as he sketches circles within squares, explaining how patterns in the desert echo the order of the heavens. It's a lesson wrapped in calm, carried on the cool evening breeze. Nearby, a guard in chainmail eyes you suspiciously. His gaze falls on your shoes, not because they're worn or out of place, but because the soft leather doesn't fit the rough streets. "Where did you get those?" he asks, with a half smile, as if your footwear is a secret you need to explain. You mumble something about a traveler's trade, and he nods slowly, as if deciding whether you're worth the trouble or just another wanderer lost in Marrakesh's maze. This is the Almoravid Empire, a place that rose from the deserts of North Africa to hold power across vast lands. Unlike other medieval realms focused on castles and armies, this kingdom grew strong on faith, trade, and a fierce discipline that shaped every part of life. The Almoravids believed in strict devotion to Islam, not just in the mosque, but in every action. How you dressed, spoke, and even how you walked. They called it Tawheed, the unity of God, which demanded unity in conduct. Walking through Marrakesh, you notice how the city's architecture reflects this principle. Buildings are simple but purposeful, designed to protect from the harsh sun and the biting wind. Whitewashed walls bounce sunlight during the day, while thick wooden doors keep the heat out at night. The mosques, with their tall minarets, rise like needles pointing to the sky, reminding everyone that the divine watches over them. Markets buzz with quiet energy. Merchants sell spices that color the air with cinnamon and cumin, their voices low but confident. You pass by stalls of leather goods, silks, and pottery glazed with deep blues and greens that seem to hold the ocean inside. Unlike the loud, chaotic fairs of other kingdoms, this market feels measured, controlled, a place where trust is built with a nod, not a shout. But not everything here is peaceful. The Almoravids are warriors too, though their battles are fought with the same seriousness as their prayers. Mounted horsemen, wrapped in thick cloaks to protect against desert storms, patrol the borders. Their weapons are simple but effective. Curved swords called scimitars and round shields painted with bold patterns. These fighters defend their faith and their lands with a quiet intensity that keeps enemies wary. Despite their stern ways, the Almoravids also value knowledge. The Imam's lesson is just one example. In cities like Marrakesh and Fez, scholars gather in libraries filled with scrolls and books translated from Arabic, Latin, and Greek. They debate philosophy, mathematics, and medicine by candlelight. One famous physician here even studied how to treat diseases using plants found in the desert, long before many others in Europe thought about such things. Religion shapes daily life. 5 times a day, the call to prayer echoes through the streets, pulling people from their tasks to pause, bow, and remember. It's a practice that creates rhythm in the city, dividing time not by hours on a clock, but by moments of reflection. You find yourself watching, almost entranced, as a man washes his hands, feet, and face before stepping into the mosque. It's a ritual of purity, a way to prepare the body for communion with the divine. The strictness of the Almoravid way might seem harsh to some, but it also brought order in a world often ruled by chaos. Their laws governed everything, from how merchants traded goods to how neighbors settled disputes. Breaking the rules could mean public punishment, but justice was swift and seen as a way to protect the community, not just punish the individual. One of the more surprising customs involves hospitality. Though their faith requires modesty and restraint, Almoravid hosts treat guests with great honor. You might be offered sweet mint tea, poured carefully from a height into small glasses. It's a simple gesture, but in this desert kingdom, it means safety, friendship, and respect. Refusing the tea is almost unthinkable. At night, Marrakesh changes again. Lamps flicker in windows, and the scent of roasting meat drifts through the alleys. Storytellers gather in small circles, weaving tales of prophets, heroes, and jinn, mysterious spirits that haunt the sands. You listen as their voices rise and fall, the words floating like smoke against the cool sky. Despite the empire's power, history shows how fragile it was. The Almoravids held their lands tightly, but time and changing alliances chipped away at their strength. Still, their legacy lives on, in architecture, in scholarship, and in a faith that shaped not only North Africa, but parts of Spain and beyond. As you prepare to leave Marrakesh, you notice the guard from earlier standing by the gate. This time, he nods as you pass, a silent acknowledgement between two travelers from different worlds. You glance down at your shoes, now a little less out of place, and step back onto the dusty road. The sun has set completely, and the desert cools around you. The stars above seem sharper here, as if they remember the prayers whispered long ago beneath this same sky. You breathe deeply, carrying with you the quiet strength of a kingdom built from sand, stone, and silent faith. Now, you're in the Kingdom of Poland. You arrive just as the village church bell tolls for evening prayer. Its deep tone hangs in the chilly air alongside the distant howl of wolves. Evening in medieval Poland moves between faith and wild nature. 1 minute, you hear villagers whispering tales of saints' miracles. The next, you might spot hungry eyes flashing behind moonlit trees. This land balances fields of gold with fierce defenses. Poland is known widely for its rolling wheatlands, the breadbasket of Eastern Europe. Farmers rise before sunrise, tending rye and barley in long, narrow strips behind their wooden homes. This system ensures every family works land near their front door. Need to carry pails back and forth? Keep them close. A crisp breeze carries the scent of fresh grain. Laughing children chase each other between fences made of rough timber. Many houses are simple log structures, but some towns boast stronger wooden walls that creak under watchful guards. These fortifications, called groties, sit on hills or beside rivers, like Tarnow's brick-lined fortifications, strong in their time. The walls keep raiders and beasts out, but never silence the wind. Food shapes daily life. People eat porridge made from groats, barley, wheat, or buckwheat mixed with peas, beans, or lentils. Soup is a constant companion at the table, and kebabs of pork or chicken appear when the harvest is strong. Sauerkraut, pickles, mushrooms, berries, they spice up otherwise simple meals. Ale flows freely. Wine is rare even among nobles. Religion threads through every moment. Churches cluster in villages, and monasteries dot the countryside. Bells ring several times a day, calling you to prayer or warning of trouble. Monks copy Latin texts and tend gardens. They share new crops. They teach the basics of geometry and music. Their villages bloom under those lessons. At dusk, the nobles emerge. They gather in smoky halls above the village, timber beams stained dark. Nobles wear furs and linen. They argue politics. Should we ally with Bohemia or face the marauding Tatars? They toast with thick beer, telling stories of raids and victories. These discussions can stretch into dawn, and often do. Their laughter echoes off the beams, a rich contrast to distant wolf calls. The Tatar and Mongol invasions shaped life here. Wooden castles were common in the 1100s to 1200s, but many were burnt in raids. In the 14th century, under King Casimir III the Great, stone walls began replacing wood to better defend towns and monasteries. He also welcomed foreign craftsmen, Germans and Italians, to help build defenses. You walk past fields with oxen plowing the 3-field rotation system, keeping soil healthy. Fields are green, brown, gold, a patchwork quilt on the land. Inside a peasant hut, someone brews ale over heavy flames. Another family spins wool. Boys tie straps on cloaks. Girls prepare supper from whatever the season offers. Trade routes lend color and noise. Polish amber travels north. Salt comes down from mines like Wieliczka and Bochnia, where miners carve chapels and tunnels deep beneath the ground, all lit by candles. Merchants ride slow wagons to Krakow, Toruń, and Gdansk. Fresh news arrives with them, about wars to the west or flour shortages to the south. Climate plays its part in everything. Winters can be brutal. Daylight shrinks. People tend animals, chop wood, and mend clothing. They share simple stories to pass the cold nights. In spring, they rise again following the rhythm of seed and soil. Yet, life in Poland isn't always a struggle. It thrives in small wonders. Festivals honor saints and hold spinning contests, songs, and sometimes wild dancing. The church blesses newly harvested grain. Children chase each other with sticks, pretending they are knights defending a village. Women laugh while weaving baskets in the shade of a tree. One day, you'll visit a noble stone castle. Soot streaks the walls, tapestries hang in halls, and suits of armor guard the entrance. But tonight, your world is wooden. Fields, fences, palisades, alive with wind, wheat, faith, and watchful wolves. This kingdom is defined not by might or gold, but by steady fields and fierce loyalty, by humble homes made of oak, cooled by river mist, and warmed by hearths reverberating laughter and prayers. Now, as darkness deepens, the church bell tolls once more. Somewhere a noble finishes his toast. Somewhere wood smolders in a hearth. Somewhere a wolf softens its howl. You lie down on your straw-stuffed mattress under a blanket of linen. Outside, snow may soon arrive, but inside, warmth remains, fed by grain, faith, community, and the quiet pride of a kingdom rooted in earth. Meanwhile, the road to the kingdom of Georgia is no road at all. It is a ribbon of dirt and stone clinging to the edge of a cliff. Somewhere below, a river coils like a silver thread through deep valleys. The wind does not whistle here. It hums, low and constant, like a forgotten hymn. Snow still clings to the higher slopes, even though spring has already touched the valleys with green. You arrive with dust in your boots, the scent of pine on your cloak, and the feeling that time moves differently in this part of the world. No one hurries. No one seems surprised by your presence either. You're given a nod, a wooden bowl of wine, and a seat by a fire built inside a hut made of stone older than any calendar you know. Georgia is a land of contradiction. Proud but soft-spoken, steeped in history, but surprisingly playful. This is a place where kings write poetry and bishops own swords. Here, to build a church, you do not stop at arches and bell towers. You carve it into the face of a mountain. You hew cathedrals from stone the way a sculptor might chip away at a statue, patient and certain. At dawn, you walk uphill toward one of these marvels, a monastery perched like a bird's nest on the edge of a cliff, its walls the same color as the rock beneath it. The monks do not speak until the third hour. Their voices come like bells, measured and unexpected. Inside the chapel, incense curls into the air. The walls are covered in icons, not painted in haste, but carefully layered with gold and sorrow. Faces of saints with large, dark eyes look back at you, as if they know more than they'll ever say. One monk gives you a slice of honey bread and a wink you didn't expect either. The Kingdom of Georgia, at its height, is ruled by Queen Tamar. They call her King out of respect. She is wise, fair, and, if the stories are to be believed, absolutely unbothered by nonsense. She holds council in fresco-covered halls, and her decisions are swift and elegant. No one dares to question her authority. She defeats invading armies. With the same ease, she commissions a hymn, and her court is filled not just with warriors, but musicians, poets, and astronomers. If you don't know how to read the stars or compose a stanza, best stay silent at the table. Architecture here is more than shelter. It's language. Churches bloom across the countryside like stone flowers. Each one tells a story, not just of Christ or saints, but of the kingdom's fierce survival. Every arch whispers about invasions repelled, alliances forged, miracles witnessed. Georgian script winds around the doorways like ivy. Its loops and curls are unlike anything you've seen. It doesn't march in lines. It dances. Even their wine is older than history. They press grapes the old way, by foot, and bury the juice in clay jars beneath the ground until it becomes something worth writing songs about. When they offer you a cup, it comes with a toast that sounds more like a prayer than a greeting. Georgians are not loud, but they are not shy. If you are hungry, someone feeds you. If you are cold, someone places a cloak around your shoulders. If you are alone, someone invites you to a feast, and you end the night dancing with a stranger who insists you are family, even if you've only just met. One evening, you watch a troupe of dancers in a village square. They move like smoke, feet never quite touching the earth. One moment, the men are spinning in a blur. The next, they're completely still, like carved statues, eyes locked forward. A woman steps forward, balancing a sword on her head, then dips low, the blade never falling. Children clap. Old women laugh like they've seen it 1,000 times and still find it perfect. You find yourself laughing too, though you don't know why. It's just that kind of place. Georgia's enemies are many. Seljuks to the east, Byzantines to the west. But they hold the mountains like a secret, and these peaks have never betrayed them. Every invader learns that you can march through the valleys, but you'll never take the cliffs. Even their horses seem to know where not to step. One evening, as the moon hangs low over the stone rooftops, a boy shows you how to read the stars. He points with a crooked stick at a cluster you've never seen before. "That's Tamar's crown," he says. You nod like you understand, even if you don't. In this kingdom, memory is long. Legends do not fade. They age like wine. The songs sung by firesides tonight are the same ones hummed by builders 1,000 years ago. A woman hands you a carved wooden cup and tells you her grandfather shaped it during a winter when the snow swallowed the church steps. She's not telling a story. She's just telling the truth. Georgia doesn't need exaggeration, but it needs time. You wake the next morning to the sound of bells from the cliffside monastery. The air smells of smoke, lavender, and bread. Somewhere below, a shepherd whistles. Somewhere above, the wind begins its low hymn again. You are offered another bowl of wine before breakfast. You accept, of course. After all, when a nun hands you honey bread and tells you that kings once wrote poems in these hills, you don't ask for proof. You just take another bite and try not to drop crumbs on your robe. The wind does not stop on the steppe. It whistles and hums like an old throat, singing song you can't quite place, pulling at the wool trim of your coat, lifting the dust in slow, spiraling dances that never reach the sky. There are no trees, no hedges, no towers to block your view. Just grass. Endless grass. Every horizon looks the same, and somehow, every direction feels like it might lead you somewhere dangerous. This is the Mongol Khan Atiz. A yak stares at you. It blinks once, then twice, and then, as if satisfied you pose no threat, it shifts its considerable weight and deposits something warm and unspeakable into the grass. You've arrived. A ring of yurts, the round, felt-covered homes of the Mongol people, dots the land like pale mushrooms on the field. They're low and wide, their smoke holes leaking the scent of roasted mutton and bitter tea. Men and women move between them swiftly. Nobody dawdles here. There is always something to tend to. Horses, herds, fires, family. You, meanwhile, are doing your best not to trip over your own boots while nodding politely at anyone who looks your way, which is everyone. Constantly. This is not a place that forgets faces. You're handed a bowl without a word. It's filled with something white and slightly fizzy, Arag fermented mare's milk. You sip it. It tastes alive, sharp and sour with a hint of something smoky. You nod as if this is completely normal. A nearby child snorts. She's 6 years old and already braver than you. The Mongol Khanades are not kingdoms in the way you've come to know them. There are no stone castles, no courts full of jesters or scribes. Power here is not kept behind walls. It rides, it breathes, it gallops over the plains at the command of a man who may have conquered more of the world than anyone before or after. His name is still spoken in low tones, Chinggis Khan. His sons, grandsons, and great-grandsons rule now in many corners of the known world, from China to Persia to the shores of the Black Sea. But the center of gravity remains here, beneath the open sky, in the heart of the Mongol steppe. The Khan's tent is larger than the rest. Inside, it's not what you expected. It's not gold or velvet or polished wood. It's felt and rugs and lacquered leather. It smells of sheep fat, firewood, and authority. A man sits cross-legged on a cushion, a bow at his side, and a fur cap pushed back on his head. He nods once. You nod back. This is not the place to speak unless invited. You are not invited, but your presence has meaning. Foreigners are welcome in Mongol lands, as long as they follow the rules. Disobey the strict code of conduct, the yasa, and you might find yourself punished with terrifying efficiency. Spill a cup of milk? That's sacred. You could lose your hand. Insult a guest? The host could be punished. Everything is designed to preserve the order of the camp. It works. Nobody wants to die over butter tea. Out on the steppe, discipline is life. A single horse gone missing could doom a family. A missed message could cost a battle. So the Mongols created systems. Efficient, brutal, brilliant systems. Couriers, yam riders, race from yurt to yurt, carrying messages across thousands of miles, changing horses every 25 miles like clockwork. Trade caravans travel in guarded packs. Military formations move with clockwork precision. The punishment for stealing a horse is swift and unforgettable. So is the reward for loyalty. And yet, there's a strange kind of freedom here. You sleep where you stop. You eat what the land gives. You learn to trust the rhythm of the herd and the wisdom of wind patterns. Children are taught to ride before they can walk. Even the smallest boy can shoot a bird mid-flight from horseback without slowing. You try to ride. You try to hold on. The pony you're given senses your fear and makes a decision. You will not be going far. Today. Later that night, the stars burn closer than they do anywhere else. There is no torchlight to dull them, no smoke from 1,000 chimneys. Just the sky and the low murmur of families telling stories by firelight. You listen. There's laughter. There's also warning. One tale is about a merchant who lied to a Khan. Another ends with a man buried up to his neck in the snow. But in between are stories of loyalty, strength, and uncanny skill. You fall asleep on a pile of furs, the low hum of singing and snoring wrapping around you like a second blanket. Somewhere in the dark, a flute plays a slow melody. You think about the journey that brought you here, through rivers, deserts, cities. You've seen kings drink from goblets and priests chant under vaulted ceilings. But here on the steppe, there is no need for walls, only wind, discipline, and 1,000 hooves beating against the ground like a drum. And in that moment, under the sky that never ends, you begin to understand. The Mongol Empire didn't need castles. It carried its kingdom on horseback, and everyone, friend or foe, knew exactly when it was coming. You arrive as the sun sets on Palermo. The sky is stained with streaks of burnt orange. The port smells of salt, spice, and slow-cooked lamb. Palms line the streets. A breeze, warmer than expected, lifts your hood and tosses your hair into your face. You are not in Northern Europe anymore. You are in Sicily, where the air speaks 3 languages. The stones remember 5 empires, and the dinner may or may not be poisoned. This is the kingdom of Sicily. You are led through narrow alleys by a boy no older than 10. He points toward domes and towers and murmurs something that might be Greek or Arabic or a blend of both. Here, the churches look like mosques. The mosques look like basilicas. And the palaces? They look like all of the above were thrown together in a dream. At court, gold is everywhere, but no one acts surprised. The walls are painted with vines and beasts, and every column leans just enough to make you doubt your eyesight. A musician plucks a tune on a strange harp, while a servant offers figs wrapped in cured meat. You reach for one, then remember the warning. Moments earlier, a jester with crooked teeth whispered, "The fish is poisoned." He laughed immediately after, but you hesitate anyway. The jester is now juggling 3 pomegranates, one of which bursts midair. This is the court of King Roger II, or perhaps one of his descendants. The Norman rulers have adopted the customs of the Arabs they conquered, who once ruled the island as part of a vast caliphate. And before them, it was the Byzantines. And before that, the Romans. And before that, well, you've lost track. Everyone has taken their turn here. In the palace, scribes copy legal codes in Latin, while poets sing in Arabic. Greek priests walk silently past Muslim astronomers. A Jewish physician is currently measuring your pulse while muttering about bile and wind. No one argues. Not here. Not in Sicily. Here, tolerance is not a slogan. It is an arrangement, delicate but profitable. You sit beneath a ceiling painted with lions, hawks, and stars. Every tile has been cut by hand. You wonder how long it took, How many lives were spent shaping this beauty? The servant returns, this time with lemon water. You sip. It's safe. Probably. In the garden, oranges hang heavy from the trees. A peacock struts past a monk reading a scroll. Somewhere nearby, someone is discussing maps and ships and trade. The Mediterranean is not a border here. It is a highway. And Palermo is the toll booth. Goods come from Cairo, Athens, Barcelona, and even distant Constantinople. They pass through the markets here, where no vendor ever speaks just one tongue. You walk through one of those markets now. You hear curses in Genoese, prayers in Syriac, and jokes in Sicilian dialect. A woman sells fabrics dyed with crushed snails. A man offers perfume in vials no bigger than a thimble. A child, barefoot, sells roasted almonds covered in honey. You buy a handful, and they burn your fingers. At the edge of the square, two scholars are arguing about medicine. One insists on Galen. The other prefers Avicenna. You smile. No one in your village even knows how to spell medicine. As night falls, torches are lit. The palace glows gold. Dancers perform in front of a fountain. Their feet beat out rhythms taught by Moorish tutors. A drummer follows with a beat older than the Crusades. You're handed a wine made with raisins and dates. You drink it and forget the jester's warning. For a moment, you feel lucky to be alive. But then a messenger rushes past. Whispers follow him. A duke was found foaming at the mouth after supper. No one saw who served him. No one remembers what he ate. No one wants to talk about it now. Later, back in your chamber, you stare at the ceiling. Painted stars gaze down at you. Somewhere in the halls beyond, a bell chimes once, then twice. A soft knock comes at the door. It's the servant again. He brings hot water and a smile that gives away nothing. You sleep lightly. The mattress is stuffed with straw, but softer than your usual bed. Outside the window, moonlight glimmers on tiled roofs and gardens. Somewhere far off, a lute is being plucked. You hear a low voice singing in Arabic. Then another in Greek. Then silence. When morning comes, you walk to the harbor. Fishermen pull in their nets, singing songs with no words. A monk walks past with a loaf of bread and nothing else. You think again of the poisoned fish. You see the jester sitting on a barrel, sharpening a pear with a knife, far too long for comfort. He winks. You ask him why people say the fish is poisoned. He shrugs. Because sometimes it is, he says, and laughs again. You leave the kingdom of Sicily more confused than when you arrived. It is not just a place. It is a contradiction. A Christian king with a Muslim court. A Latin law written in Arabic script. A palace full of peace, interrupted by whispers of murder. But somehow it works, at least for now. You board a small boat. The sails catch the wind. The jester waves. He's still laughing. You don't know if he ever stops. You climb a narrow path carved into red rock. The air is warm, the stones dusty under your sandals. Soon, you reach a hilltop where walls rise like silent guardians. This is the Armenian kingdom of Cilicia, hidden, enduring, caught between empires. Inside, sunlight dances across towers painted with frescoes. Knights in chainmail train with spears, their clinks echoing in courtyards near monks hunched under scrolls. The languages overlap. Greek, Syriac, Arabic, Persian. In quiet chambers, scholars huddle over ancient pages, translating one voice into another. Their patience weaves threads of knowledge across religions and lands. A monk with ink-stained fingers greets you. He offers a loaf so warm it steams. The crust crackles when you press it, the crumb light. You break off a chunk, tasting salt and barley. It is the best you've ever eaten. But war never leaves these walls. Watchtowers stand ready. Archers perch in small rooms overlooking valleys. Armies march below, flags dancing in parades that are less about joy and more about promise. Promise of defense, promise of struggle. Inside the palace, diplomats gather at low tables. They sip pomegranate wine and speak softly. One noble laughs when another reminds him that a treaty holds only until swords speak louder. Their smiles are tense, like cats curled before a storm. In the cathedral, priests chant in low voices. Candles burn beneath carved arches. They move with care, swinging censers that send incense through the shadows. The fog aroma smells of pine and history. A traveler kneels, crosses himself, then notices your curious stare. He whispers that relics here are more prized than gold stones. On the walls above the cathedral doors, icons glow with deep reds and bright blues. A local elder explains their meaning. Saints who defended this kingdom with prayer and sword, whose stories teach courage. You wonder if they saved more souls than walls. The market is small, but lively. You wander between stalls that display clay jars filled with olives, raisins, chestnuts. You buy a few dried apricots, wrapping them in cloth before slipping them into your pocket. A merchant offers a woven belt made of silk borrowed from faraway looms. He points to a pattern shaped like vines and stars, symbols of resilience and faith. In the evening, you walk above a quiet garden where roses perfume the air. You can almost glimpse the sea in the distance. A guard nods at you. Even when swords hang at belts, some courtesy remains. You share the garden path with a scribe returning to his room. He smiles and holds up a small lamp. For the Greeks tonight, he says. Their scroll of Homer finishes in a few lines. His pride is quiet. His eyes shine. Your chamber overlooks a valley bathed in rosy sunset glow. Crickets begin singing. Inside the room, a low stool and folded blanket await. A pitcher of water, cool to your touch, stands ready. You sit and watch the sky burn deep shades of orange and violet. You let the day settle into your bones. At night, distant horns sound from the gate. You rise to the window. Soldiers change shifts. Lanterns bob along the ramparts. The kingdom may sleep briefly, but vigilance never rests. You sip water and listen to distant steps. Calm, careful, constant. This place stands at the crossroads of cultures and faiths. Greeks, Armenians, Franks, Syrians. They meet here, trade here, fight here. Languages mix in plazas. Marriages cross lines of creed. Monks drink tea with traders. Soldiers learn from scholars. It is not perfect harmony. It is tension wrapped in cooperation. Yet, what makes Cilicia unique is that same tension. This hilltop realm is small, but its mind is vast. Scrolls pass hands in secret libraries, new words born from old tongues. Recipes adapt to bring flavor to stone tables. Woodworkers carve crosses and shields with equal care. Everyone learns the art of living between forces. You arrive at a dusty caravanserai just outside a city wall. Minarets rise around you like silent watchers. Their thin spires pierce the sky. A low breeze brings the scent of spices and heated stone. This is Anatolia, under Seljuk rule. A land of tents, turbaned scholars, and careful hospitality. It feels familiar and strange all at once. Inside the caravanserai's courtyard, camels rest with bells clinking. Merchants from the east and west haggle over silk. A bolt of rich purple is offered as a princess's gift. Nearby, bakers pull fresh flatbread from an oven built into clay floor. Its warmth reminds you of home, though your shoes are dustier than usual. Your guide leads you past arches carved with verses praising the Sultan. He wears a loose coat and intricate turban. In Anatolia, dress matters. It tells you who you are and whom you serve. A scholar in long robes counts on a peaked stone pulpit. He teaches numbers to eager students. These figures are not just math. They are tools for architects designing mosques that swirl with geometry. You watch as another man measures shadows imprinted on the courtyard. He's preparing to judge the time of prayer. Such care for the clock brings a quiet order to daily life. The call to prayer will come soon, but not yet. The scholar's chalk moves like a bird on a board. At a low table, your host sits cross-legged. He's a local noble, dispatched from the Sultan's court. He wears fine leather sandals embroidered in gold thread. He offers you sweet grape juice and warm dates. It's a gesture meant to show honor, but he never puts down the dagger strapped to his waist. This blade is small, but sharp, always within reach. He smiles politely as if to say, "We trust each other, mostly." You learn that Seljuk friendship always includes readiness. A dagger reminds both parties of fortune's edge, but in this place, hospitality and caution are woven together like the patterns on a carpet. At sundown, a man shouts from a balcony above. He recites beautiful verses with a melody that drifts through the hush. This is called the maqam, a haunting melody intended to lift the soul. The voice carries through the city gates and over red-tiled roofs. Its resonance reminds you that faith here is art, never dull. Night gathers. Lanterns are lit, their glow warm and golden. You're led to a tent set up for your stay. It stands firm on a wooden frame decorated with stripes of blue, white, and red. Inside, you find cushions, rugs, and a low table with an oil lamp. A servant offers a bowl of rice, lamb, and pomegranate seeds. The sweet tang surprises your palate, but it is exactly right. Your host sits across from you and begins a story. How the Sultan once traveled across mountain passes in winter, dressed as a simple soldier. The blade at your host's waist means he listens, but also that he watches. And you too feel that shadow over the feast. Brotherhood and distrust, both at the same time. After dinner, you wash your hands in scented water poured from a brass ewer. The water drips into a pewter basin. You feel cleaner than you have since entering Anatolia. The servant stands by, ready for more. Custom demands it. Hospitality is serious business here. Painting someone as unclean is the worst insult. Outside the tent, a flute plays quietly. A young musician offers soft notes that drift like smoke. You lean back on a cushion of green velvet and let your eyes close. Sand murmurs under the wind. Somewhere, men talk business. Others pray. You can almost keep your eyelids open. Almost remember that you still live in the modern world. But you let yourself drift. This place invites you to forget. In the middle of the night, you feel a weight on the fabric of the tent. The noble stands and stretches. He grabs his dagger by the hilt, glancing through the flap. You smile sleepily. He nods, offering calm. Then he sits again, sheath and all. Even in rest, he stays alert. That night, you dream of tall towers and swirling carpets. You think of minarets like stone lances. You remember the scholar patiently drawing lines before prayer. You taste the sweet fruit and feel the dust in your throat. In the morning, you will pack your things and thank your host. You will step back into the heat and the dust outside. But for this one night, you have walked into a world built from tents and turbans, from hospitality and wary blades. You have felt the blend of comfort and caution that defines a Seljuk stay in medieval Anatolia. And when you leave, you will carry a piece of this world with you, the echo of a makam, the taste of pomegranate seeds, and the memory of a host whose friendship came with a sharp reminder that peace and peril walk side by side in these lands. You begin your journey by climbing a narrow, winding path through misty hills. Each step lands gently on grass that glows with morning dew. The air smells of pine, wet stone, and flowers hidden between old rocks. Up here, everything echoes. Even a cough bounces back like a reply. This is the Welsh kingdoms. At the top, a small stone castle rests on a ridge. Its walls blend into the gray mountain behind it. This is where the princes of Gwynedd once ruled. In the 1200s, names like Llywelyn the Great worked to bring scattered lands together. But outside those halls, daily life stayed close to tradition, song, and a strong love for land. A soft harp melody drifts through the air. In these parts, bards are not just singers. They are historians. They memorize long poems, speak of great battles, and praise heroes from hundreds of years ago. Before books were common, it was bards who remembered everything. And they didn't do it for free. The best ones were paid in cattle, land, or warm cloaks. Down the path from the castle, you reach a village. Small homes with thatched roofs stand in a circle. A shepherd waves at you. He doesn't say a word, but hums a tune instead. He's holding a crowth, a little wooden instrument with strings. Music fills the space between people. Even the baker hums while kneading dough. At the center of the village is an Eisteddfod. It's a contest of song and poetry. Bards take turns showing off their memory and skill. One starts a poem, but stops midway. He frowns, shakes his head, and starts again. Nobody laughs. In fact, everyone nods. That's how serious they are about words. You hear strange stories of kings turned to birds or lakes that sing. Everyone speaks in metaphor. If someone says a man is a stone, they don't mean he's heavy. They mean he won't budge, even for a storm. Stories from the Mabinogi are told by firelight. People still believe magic hides in caves and trees. They say even Merlin walked these hills. Near the stables, a sheep gets a haircut. The shepherd brushes its wool while two old women point and joke about the new fashion. One says the sheep looks like a nobleman from the east. The sheep bleats, clearly not pleased. Laughter spreads through the yard like wildfire. Moments like this are stitched into daily life. Gentle, small joys. But not everything is playful. When danger comes, men gather with spears. Welsh soldiers don't wear heavy armor. They move fast through hills and know every secret path. You spot a group training in a quiet glen. They practice in silence, barely disturbing the grass beneath their feet. Laws here are different. Some follow the old rules of Hywel Dda. These laws treat theft and broken promises with calm fairness. Others just listen to the local elder. Justice varies from one valley to the next. What's common is a deep respect for custom. Outsiders rarely understand the balance. Look at the castles. Some don't rise high like Norman ones. They curve with the land, almost hidden. Dolbadarn, for example, stands like a guardian of the pass. It isn't grand, but it watches everything. From its tower, you see the curve of the valley, the smoke of cooking fires, and the river that never stops. As the sun sets, you sit inside a hall lit by peat flames. The stew smells of lamb and herbs. Bread is baked dark and firm. A bard plays another song. This one is slow and low. It tells of a prince lost at sea. By the end, the room is silent. No one claps. They just nod. After dinner, the village gathers outside. A circle forms around a fire. Someone brings out a fiddle. A horn joins in. A few couples dance while the rest tap their feet. A child claps offbeat, but proudly. The dog howls along. Nobody tells him to stop. Later, an old man sings a final verse about the hills. His voice is soft, but it carries. He sings of kings no one remembers, of forests older than any church, and of stars that watched it all. The sky above you is wide and filled with light. No lanterns hide the stars here. When it's time for bed, you lie on a thick blanket filled with wool. The room is dark but warm. Outside, the wind hums. You can still hear the harp, or maybe it's your mind holding on to the sound. This place feels different. Not frozen in time, but quietly holding on to it. Tomorrow, you may walk through the lands of French dukes or Spanish nobles, but tonight you rest in a place where songs live longer than stone, where sheep get nicknames and hills hold memories, where every story is a thread in a much older tapestry. The road into the kingdom of Bohemia winds through forest so thick it eats the sky. Trees groan like old monks, and moss carpets everything. Stones, roofs, even the bones of forgotten saints. You ride into town half expecting to see a bear in a bishop's hat. Instead, you find something even stranger. An entire village already drunk before noon. You stop at a timber-framed hall where the beams are older than some royal bloodlines. The innkeeper slides a clay cup your way. It's filled with something thick, brown, and alive. You sip. It tastes like bread, mushrooms, and a dare. Everyone calls it beer, but it has the consistency of stew and the alcohol content of a confession. No one drinks water unless they're washing their hands or dying. The man next to you is wearing fur, smells like firewood, and speaks a form of Czech that seems designed to be shouted from rooftops. You nod politely. He gestures to your cup and says something that sounds approving, then slams his empty mug on the table like it owes him money. The entire room follows suit. The floorboards agree to hold everyone's weight. For now. Outside, a bell rings. Not a soft church bell, but a heavy iron beast that shakes the bones in your back. It's tethered in a stone tower shaped like a barrel with windows. You learn later that the bell was forged by monks who blessed it with holy oil and beer. Mostly beer. It rings for weddings, sermons, danger, and market openings. It has no off switch. You're late to Mass. The abbot glares but lets you in. You stand near the back. The sermon is in Latin, mumbled by a man who speaks it like he's making it up on the spot. You catch words like virtus, peccatum, and please stop coughing. The locals bow, cross themselves, and glance around to see who's watching. You do the same. When the prayers end, a choir begins. The music is beautiful, in the way old things are beautiful. Uneven, earnest, and cracked. One of the singers has a cough. No one seems to mind. The chapel smells like wax, garlic, and last night's supper. The frescoes on the ceiling show saints frowning at demons who look suspiciously like tax collectors. Back in the square, you're asked your name. You say it carefully. A scribe nods and writes it down. 5 extra vowels, 3 silent letters, and a question mark. In Bohemia, there are no spelling rules, only spelling traditions. Names mutate depending on who's listening, and birth records are more like polite suggestions. Even the king has 3 different signatures, depending on his mood. At the edge of town, you visit the blacksmith. His workshop smells like ash and iron. Sparks fly. He's hammering a horseshoe while explaining, loudly, why nobles ruin everything. His check is vivid, spiced with words that no one writes down. You nod again. He hands you a horseshoe for luck. It's still warm. You stop at a nearby monastery. The monks are making beer, again. Their robes are patched. Their hands are red from scrubbing barrels. The abbot tells you that beer is safer than water and holier than wine, and he offers you a mug to prove it. You nod, because saying no in Bohemia is both rude and illegal. The monks also copy books. You see one writing a Latin sentence, crossing it out, and muttering something very Czech under his breath. You realize the margin notes are more honest than the actual text. They contain complaints about ink, mice, and the smell of the scribe next door. History, it turns out, is written by tired men in cold rooms. As evening arrives, the village gathers in the square. There's music, flutes, drums, something with strings and no name. The dancing is energetic and slightly dangerous. Someone hands you a pastry filled with cheese, herbs, and the kind of mystery you only bite once. Children chase each other. An old woman tells fortunes with a deck of cards made from pressed bark. Later, when the moon climbs, you climb with it to the old stone walls above the village. You look down at the flickering hearths, the open windows, the steeples wrapped in fog. The land stretches out in every direction like a tapestry. You can hear the bells faintly. Somewhere, a drunk man sings in a language that never made it into books. Bohemia is not tidy. It doesn't rhyme. It's loud and strange and full of kindness disguised as grumbling. It smells like smoke and yeast. It tells its stories sideways. But it works, somehow. And if you ask anyone why it works, they'll shrug, hand you a beer, and say, "It's Bohemia." You'll understand. Thanks for listening. If you're already asleep, great. We've successfully lulled you to sleep. And if you're still awake, well, that's impressive. If you genuinely enjoy these boring stories about history, feel free to subscribe to our channel whenever you're in the mood. Sleep well, and good night.